It's time for the Sin Bin. 5 minutes for fighting.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and a happy Saturday for those of you who are going to be listening today, and a happy every other day during the week for those of you who are listening on any other day of the week. We're back, bitches. We fought and we won. Oh, my God. Wow. So we are sorry that we haven't been able to make some videos as of late. We had to fight the man and the machine to get our channel back.
And I was in Tampa Bay, too.
And Alex was also in Tampa Bay, but we're back, baby. Welcome to episode 4 of the Sin Bin. I'm here with my co-host, Alex.
Como estas?
And what's going on, buddy?
Not a lot. Happy to be home. Had a great time in Tampa Bay, but now it's back to business, and this is going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to today's topic.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. No, guys, we got an interesting one for you, and it's kind of been a hot topic in the league lately. And so we're going to talk about Matt Rempe as a whole, as his character. And we're going to just address him and the suspension that he recently received. It was a 4-game suspension handed down for him by the league for an elbow to the head on Siegenthaler of the New Jersey Devils. And then we're just going to also talk about where we might have a rare occasion where Alex and I agree on something. And it's going to be Alex and I versus the league on how the league should kind of address these types of players in terms of multiple layered approaches. So we hope you enjoy it. We're going to get we'll get started with, Rempe himself, and then we'll lead into like, how can the league help players like him, or how should the league address him? Alex, how do you feel about the suspension?
I think the suspension was a fair amount. I had no issue with 4 games. I originally called for 3, but I think 4 would have probably been my next area. That 3 to 4 game range, I think, was fair. I think they definitely took some account into what he did to Bastion a few games prior, also against the Devils. Been looking at this and said this guy has had 2 majors in recent memory. That's something you've been adamant towards as well. But I think the suspension amount was fair. Here's the thing with Matt Rempe. I think a player like him brings viewership to the game for sure, but for both the right and wrong reasons. I think for the right reasons, because I've always been someone who is very adamant towards fighting in hockey. I think it's good for the game. I think it brings out adrenaline, and in a weird way, it's safer because when you don't let these guys let off 30 seconds of animosity, they let their frustration boil and they start doing stupid shit like what Rempe just did and start doing illegal checks from behind and leading to much more severe injuries down the line. So in this instance, I think the viewership and publicity that he brought to the game was good, but it was kind of like a good example of this. Do you remember Jeremy Lin in the NBA? He used to play for the New York Knicks.
I do.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Linsanity run. Obviously not from like a talent perspective, but like how everyone needed to see what's this guy going to do next? Is he going to get in another fight? Is he going to be laying a big hit? But at the same time, some of the stuff he's doing as well is not good for the league. He's bringing negative looks to it because he's building a dirty rep. He's now had 2 major penalties. He's getting a lot of scuffles. Not all of them started by him. That fight he had with Nick Delorier was one of the best fights I've seen, maybe the best fight I've seen all year. He's had a few other good scraps, but he's also going to watch the way he plays because he builds an animosity. He builds a bad rep, and it's going to make opposition want to go after the Rangers' stars. And it's pretty much lead to this type of bad blood that's going to lead between him and the Rangers team and other teams that will eventually lead to potentially guys like Panarin or Zibanejad or Adam Fox having to pay for it because of his actions. So I think he's, like I said, it's a double-edged sword in this. I think the publicity he brings is good, but the style of play he brings definitely needs work.
Thank you, counselor. I actually disagree with the length of suspension. I think it should have been longer. Alex, you bring up good points. It's not so much because of the fighting, but I'm going to use that as part of my argument as to why it should have been longer. I think it should have been longer because it's simply been 10 games. In his short 10-game career, he has had 2 major penalties that have been called against him. So that's an average of every 5 games he's potentially hurting somebody in a significant manner. And I think Siegenthaler is going to be missing significant time from what they said. So I think that should also take into account on multiple things. The hit on Bastian, I've heard many arguments. It was clean. Bastian's head was down. For those people who say if his head was down, I don't think you guys either never played hockey or anything like that. It's very common for players to get bent over. It's very common for your players to kind of have their head up and head down, looking at the puck, especially looking at a bouncing puck. I've played hockey. That's exactly what I've seen and done. So it's kind of, you can't always just use the, oh, well, his head was down argument. It's a shit argument. It's still the player chooses to hit the player. So that is a choice. I personally think the suspension should have been 6 games. I think something harder in the league should have come down and said, this type of play is completely and utterly unacceptable, especially if you're in a young career. It's within your first 10 games and you're already building a reputation that's going to make you seem like the next Matt coming of Matt Cook or, Scott Stevens or any of these old brutes that the league had pretty much done away with. Especially with the league's focus on concussions now, understanding how bad those are. I just think if the league really wanted to send a clear message or a clearer message, it should have been 6 games. It's not really fair to say that I would take into account his fighting history, because what Alex alluded to is correct. You don't always choose the fight. Sometimes a guy just jumps you and you have no other option. I'd say a majority of the time you do have the choice.
There was actually a guy on New Jersey that tried challenging him that game, and he actually steered away too. I noticed too. I remember.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's not fair, but I only bring it up. So here's a stat from him: is that in his first 10 games, he has 54 penalty minutes. So that means he is averaging 5 minutes a game. And I understand fighting is a completely different penalty, but on the board it's listed as it's a 5-minute major. So I think that more speaks to his character, and then how he's hitting speaks even more so to it. I'm going to be honest. I agree with Alex 100% on the fighting. I love the fact that they're bringing fighting back and like people like him bring fighting and bring this into a whole new level. I love that. I think that should never be taken out of hockey. I think it's a critical part of the game. I think when the refs, take the game out of control, the players have to take control. Then they start fighting, or when things happen, I think it's a necessity piece to the game.
So
Alex,
I want to just touch on one thing before we move on. So bringing up Rempe's length of suspension here. So here's my major reason why I disagree that I think they got it right in this instance. I want to bring up 2 guys who have a very lengthy suspension history.
Did you do the research?
I did the research today.
Okay,
Tom Wilson and Brad Marchand.
Oh,
so Tom Wilson. I'm just going to read over some of the things that he had. December 17th, 2013, blindsided Braden Shen, which was watching the video. Clear blindside hit. He did not receive a suspension. First major thing, kind of like with the Bastian thing here. It's like, okay, you're on the map now. You effed up.
Sorry, Alex. Just clarification. I might have missed it. Who is this? I'm assuming Marchand.
Marchand's my second guy, but this is Tom
Wilson.
Wilson.
Okay. So we're talking about Wilson first. Okay.
March 19th, 2015. He embellished, not exactly the same style of thing. He received a $2,000 fine. I guess we can write that one off because it's not technically a bad
embellishment's a soft one. I'm gonna
So I'll kind of push
that one. Yeah, you got to be a little.
So here's where it continues. Wilson runs over Lubinor Wisnowski in the playoffs. I believe they were playing against the Islanders in 2015. Did not receive a suspension for that one either. I watched that one. That one was bad. He had his head back turned against the boards. He got I'm sorry. That was different. I'm thinking. He took it pretty much a charging penalty, elbow to the head. Was facing Wilson. I got that mixed up with another one where I was originally starting, but had his elbow to the head. Didn't leave his feet, but it was definitely contact with the head. Did not receive a suspension. Then Wilson crushes John Moore in 2016. No suspension, December 31st. And now I'm at the point where, like, when the hell is he going to get one? Finally, he does September 23rd, 2017, when he steps into Robert Thomas, receives his first suspension of 2 games. It took 4 major hits. Now, even I think that's ridiculous. Let me start when I say that. It should not have taken 4 cheap shots for this guy to get a suspension. But my point for that was he got away with quite a bit before they finally laid the hammer. It should have been earlier. I agree. But he did not get a major suspension out of it. It was only 2 games.
I'm gonna say to that though, to the early, because prior to the 2017, I would say that the league standard for hitting it's changed. It's changed significantly. So I'm just going by today's standards and what they now know.
Now here's
But go
where
ahead.
my point really amplifies. This next hit happens 8 days later, October 1st, 2017. Tom Wilson lands Sammy Bias into the boards, cheap shot for sure, lands a 4-game suspension right after getting this 2-game. So now he's a repeat offender 8 days later, gets this now, and he only gets 4 games. This is where a big part of consistency with the Department of Players Safety really comes into effect here, where I think that they need to build something that shows like, you do this, you get a warning. Do this, you get a suspension. Do this, your suspension gets longer, so on and so forth. This is where I look at Rempe and say, yeah, he fucked up kind of with the Bastion hit. I always go 50-50 on that. He did make contact with the head, but he was bent down and so. And this hit, okay, he fucked up. He deserves a suspension. That's where I say, though, I don't think he should get 6 games. I think they kind of got it right because he deserved, because he kind of got away with something with Bastion to an extent. Not this time, but I can't lay the hammer down on him because you look at a guy like Tom Wilson who has such an extensive history and got away with all that crap, which I agree should not have taken that long. But at the same time, it took forever for him to start getting some actual suspensions. Brad Marchand, another example, I'm going to read you some of his suspension history. He's been suspended 9 times in his career. Now it's been a little bit since he had.
That's not surprising.
Yeah,
he was an asshole when he came in.
Yeah, he is definitely cleaned up. It's been I think 3 years since his last suspension. I think the Jari incident was his last one. Here's his suspension history and the length of these suspensions: 2 games for elbowing RJ Umberger, 5 games for Lowbridge and Sammy Salo, 2 games for slew-footing Derek Brassard, 3 games for clipping Mark Berensky, 2 games for spearing Jake Dotchin, 5 games for elbowing Mark Johansson, 3 games for slew-footing Oliver Ekman-Larson, 6 games for the shot on Tristan Jari, and then he's got a handful of fines there I won't get into. He's got now 9 suspensions. He's only had 1 up to 6 games, and it was the most recent one.
You know what?
That's where I kind of look into account, where it's like, that's why I can't give him 6 games, because of the history, and you look at some of these guys who have that extensive history, I can't throw the book at him for that yet.
I don't know what the frequency is, because you're right. They're consistent, but are they frequent?
That's where I understand where your point's coming from. It is a short time frame. It's 10 days. But I gave that Tom Wilson example where he made 2
twice in 8 days that's significant. And in my opinion, I agree with you. Wilson should have gotten more. That's why I'm using that as my piece to say, if it's gonna be frequent,
but he did is the issue. That's why I can't. That's why I want a level of consistency with how the Department of Play. This is where me and you agree that the DPOS needs to have a formulated chart of how they assess these suspensions.
I agree.
Maybe the first time you fuck up, it's no games or 1 game, unless if it's something.
No, I'm saying a fine. You still got to fine him.
Yeah, fine, something like that. Like, it's that first game, unless if it's something really bad, like what Brendan Gallagher did earlier in the year.
Yep.
Then you can't. But Rempe, like I said, the Bastion hit, you can have an argument both ways. This hit, he deserved a suspension. He fucked up. I agree. 2 in 10 days, he needed something, but I can't give him 6 because of the way the DPOS has had these histories with these suspensions with some of these guys.
There's also differences in the penalties that you mentioned too. So, there's the elbowing, which, warrants more. Slew footing is sticking your leg out. It could still damage somebody, but you can recover from a broken leg. It's hard to recover from concussions a lot. Like, you know what I mean?
That's a fair point.
There's different degrees of those things. So when I see like Brad suspensions or maybe versus Tom Wilson's elbowing, you see the severity increase because where they're elbowing, where they're hitting. I agree. A slew foot is really bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to defend Brad Marchand with his former slew footing. You still shouldn't do it. I agree with the league in suspending him, but there's a difference between in the area of the body, right? So your muscles and cartilage can recover pretty freaking well. We've advanced very far in medical technology to do that, but what doesn't recover is your brain,
and that's a fair point.
Yeah, and helmets. I hate to tell you guys, helmets don't do shit. It's fake. You wear a helmet.
I get into that one.
And it's to protect your head as much as you possibly can, but trust me, it does not do as much as people think. It's a placebo effect for the most part.
I'm not getting into that one.
I'm just saying. Look at the NFL. Look at the NFL and how much CTE those guys have, and their helmets are about the size of the Empire State Building.
I think the helmets do protect you from busting your brains open and having.
Yeah, that's effectively what they're used for. So if you fall and trip, you're not cracking your skull open. Yeah. But in terms of protecting your brain, really doesn't do as much as you think.
One last point before we move on to the next part of this: the Tom Wilson thing, where the 8 days between suspensions in 2017, the Sammy Bias thing was aborting from behind, which was a head injury. Yep. I just wanted to throw that out there too. And he received 4 after receiving 2. Mm-hmm. But anyway, just want to throw that point out there. Let's move on to our next thing, unless if you got something to follow up on that.
Alex is moving quick today. I guess he's got a hot date. No, I think we addressed it. I think we laid our points out on why I think 6. I'm more of a fan of in today's NHL where I think you need to send stronger messages. And just my last point on this, I don't think team leagues in lower divisions or lower tiers are teaching people how to properly hit and take hits anymore. I mean, I just look at I go and see some of my neighbors' hockey games. He's a youngin' and he went into high school, and I saw some of his games. They're leaned over all the time.
John Tortorella nailed it with Luke Hughes earlier in the
year. They're not teaching how to hit. They're not teaching how to take a hit. So I think that is also part of it. So that's also why I'm saying suspensions should be more severe and be like, if you see a guy in that position, don't just be better. Hence my name, be better. All right, let's touch upon the league. And let's start with the question is, are players like Matt Rempe, barring the penalties, barring the hits, but in terms of someone who's willing to stick up for his teammates, fight for his team, are they good for the league? I'm going to say yes.
I agree.
Okay.
Give me your reasoning and then I'll give mine.
The reasoning is plain and simple. If I'm someone who, let's just say I'm a very talented player, but I also have Brad Marchand, I have a little bit of a history that makes me a target, right? Especially for people who Mark Scheifele that in 2021 or 2020, where he reamed over Jake Evans unjustifiably because heat of the moment things happen. I'm not defending Mark or anything like that. But I would want someone like a Rempe to have my back if I ever got hit like that, to make sure that guy learns a lesson some way, shape, or form. Good, Alex. I yield to you, counsel.
I agree 100%, and I'm gonna just do a quick touch up on a history with my team. The 2021-2022 Philadelphia.
You mean the Broad Street fucking bullies?
The 2021-22 Flyers are the most unlikable team of my lifetime.
That's fine,
and that was a major part of it.
To me, they're the most unlikable team ever.
What's up?
To me, they're the most unlikable team ever next to Montreal, but that's fine. Shout out to our executive producer in the background.
My personal of watching the Flyers throughout my life, the 2021-22 team was the most unlikable team for the sheer fact that these guys just did not defend each other when these type of hits came aboard.
Yep.
This is, I think, the latter years. I think this is when Alain Vigneault ended up getting terminated and Mike Yeo ended up taking over. There were so many times where you'd see a guy just get hit like a Giroux or Cam Atkinson at the time, I think Gostisbehere was gone. Ivan Provorov. The Flyers' higher end guys would get hit, bullied, messed around, and guys just wouldn't come and defend them. Like, they were a bad team, but they were so unlikable because it was just like a boring team to watch, and they didn't defend one another. I look at this year's version of the team, and the Flyers have a few guys who are willing to scrap. Nick Seeler, Nick Delorier are two of them right there. Sean Walker even did it occasionally too. Garnett Hathaway, who I have absolutely loved since he's come.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, because he's been the definition of a great bottom six guy. Fantastic character.
You know, I think he's 4th in the league in penalty minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
You want to know who's number 1? I think it's Matt Rempe.
But I'm actually shocked the Flyers are not top 5 in fighting, because it seems like they get, whenever one of their higher end guys like Tippett, Couturier, Farabee, Konechny end up getting effed with, one of these guys will step up and throw the mitts to defend their teammates. And that's something that and it's not just the Flyers, it's throughout the league. When you have your higher up guys defend them.
I'll say it time and time again. I think it's important for players to feel like that they have someone who has that back. In the event of like someone like the Mark Scheifele incident where he just bowls over Jake Evans for no reason.
Yeah, like it's always good to have an enforcer to know like you can do things, take some chances, and where if you're gonna get hit, you're gonna have a guy that's gonna have you back to beat the ever loving fuck out of someone.
Yep, I agree.
You need that. You need that on your team. You need some snarl, because if you don't, they're just going to have their way with your stars, and there's nothing you can do about it.
So the second question to that, though, because the elephant is in the room, no pun intended, is at height. There is large height differences in the NHL. You have people ranging from like, I think, 5'7", 5'8", the shortest player, all the way up to Matt Rempe's height. And even before that, Chara, who was 7'2" on skates. How does the league kind of assess how these players hit? Because if, for me, I'm 6'2", and if I'm going in on someone that's 5'7", if my shoulder is tucked and I'm down and I'm giving them, or I'm sorry, my elbow's tucked and my shoulder is down, but if their head or if some of their body is where I am, just because of how I'm biologically built, how can the league be better at maybe recognizing that they did the best that they could? Because then that's the case where I'll say, like, yes, his head was down. There's nothing I can't get any lower to hit him square in the chest, or maybe he turns. How does the league address that? Because that's one case I feel for Matt Rempe on. Yeah,
it's a case by case scenario, and this is where I bring up Rempe, where it's the other 50-50 of perspective with that Bastion hit. Big guy. Shoulder or elbow, whatever it was, to the head. I can't remember. I don't know if it was his shoulder or his elbow. If it was his elbow, penalty, obviously. You got a match penalty, if I remember correctly. But, like, it's the thing when it comes to these is it's a bang-bang play. The game moves at such a high pace that when you have a 6'2" guy coming into like a 5'8" guy and you have that 6 inches of difference and you try to make shoulder-on-shoulder contact, the shoulder on chest, but even just the slightest movement could lead to the head. I think you have to look the way they're lining these guys up and how a guy turns when they look at these. So it really is just based off of a case-by-case scenario. Like if you're looking like the guy's head's there when you're making the movement and the guy doesn't move and you clock his head, that's one thing. But if the guy's shoulder's there and as you're making the move, he slowly turns his body and you start making contact with the head, that's when you kind of look at it as like, okay, he wasn't really aiming for the shoulder, but it's such a high-paced game. This guy's coming in at 20 miles an hour, smacking a guy, and like there's not much you can do in that instance.
No, I agree. I think that there's a piece to that. So it's just one of those things, But I don't know it's hard because when you're a ref or a zebra, whichever, or one of the four fucking blind mice on the ice, it's hard for them to make these judgment calls happening in real time. When we're very fortunate as fans, and I don't think people understand this. We're very fortunate when we're on our asses at home sitting, and then your TSN, whoever the fuck you're watching, Nesson, wherever you're from, they put it in slow motion. It's so easy for us to judge that and be like, oh, how'd you miss that? Why'd you call that? That looks so ticky-tack. They're calling this when these skaters are going 25 to 30 miles an hour.
Mark the day. Saturday, March 16th, 10:31 a.m. On this show, we are defending the refs for the first time
Rick is in the background screaming. I can hear him.
I can
I can
see
hear
the
him.
smoke boiling from
I can
his hips
see it, yeah. But I'm gonna give some leeway to that. Like on the ticky tack stuff, yes, give some leeway. Some of the stuff is happening at extremely high speed.
It really comes down to the stuff they fucked
Yep.
up on. Get right.
Yep.
Get right.
Here's my point to this. Sorry, Alex, to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But let's think of it this way. Fine, for people at Rempe's height, you know what I mean? Call a penalty on the ice, review it. You already spend 30 fucking minutes reviewing a goaltender interference and offsides calls. So what's the difference of taking the extra 2 minutes just to review whether or not maybe it was a minor? Is it a double minor? Is it a major?
We still don't know what goaltender interference is.
Well, in the NFL, no one knows what pass interference is. So see, there's issues everywhere. But that's, I think, a good way to mitigate it. But then again, I don't want the game. I don't want to sit there 45 minutes on my phone with the refs deliberating, being like, oh, well, was his elbow in? Oh, he moved his elbow a little bit, so that's a major. So he stuck it out. So there you go. No, we just got to find better ways to do it.
And that's where the DPOS comes in, where you need to find a consistent way of laying out these suspensions.
The dopes at DOPS. Nope, that's second part of it. Or honestly, outside of the league and in lower tiers, teach people how to hit. Teach people how to take a hit.
Very true.
Yeah, I see it now. I like my friend who's a coach, just for a bantam team. He's like, yeah, they're kind of discouraging hitting, and I'm just like, well, then when they get to the higher tiers, like high school or college or wherever they move on to play, if they don't know how to take a hit, they're more likely to make a mistake, or if they don't know how to give a hit, they're going to make a mistake, and you could end someone's career. So maybe it's an all-around hockey thing where it just needs to improve on how to hit, when to take a hit, when to give a hit, and, just a general awareness.
I agree, 100%.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that'll do it. Unless Alex has, other closing arguments. Dude, your hair looks.
I look like Elvis Presley
wavy.
today. Thank you very much.
No, you're not welcome. You are not welcome.
I gotta get a haircut. My thing's getting a little too long for sure. Next week, my hair will be shorter, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, good.
Or 2 weeks from now, whenever we do it next.
We got a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde version of Alex. No, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for us today. We hope you guys enjoyed the show. As always, please let us know what your thoughts are on the topics at hand. We do take a look at these comments, and we would love to hear what you guys have to say. Did we miss something? Did we address everything? Who was right? Me? Not Alex? It's just kind of.
Won this one.
Yeah, I think you got this one too. But let us know what you guys think, or if you guys have any controversial topics that you think we might agree on, or you guys think that we could do Alex and I versus the league, and then make the proposal, and then we'll play, devil's advocate. Let us know. But
ciao, everyone.
Have a good weekend, everybody.